And we are live. Good morning, everyone. Hope you're having a great day. It is Friday, November 4th, 2022. And today we're going to talk a lot about new iPads because they are now out. I have them in my hands. I have both the iPad, the regular iPad 2022, the new beautiful 10th generation upgrade, and then also the iPad Pro 2022, which is not really that much of an upgrade, but there's still things to talk about. And the Magic Keyboard Folio, the new wonderful Magic Keyboard that has some issues though, and we'll get into all that. We're also going to talk about Twitter because there's a fire, an internal forever fire around the whole Twitter thing. And there's still Apple news and tech news to get to because this is the iMore show. As always, I am your host, Luke Filipovich, and I am joined today by our iMore contributor and guest and co-host, Karen Freeman. How you doing, Karen?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Not too bad. Steven is off in Amsterdam. He's doing work. He's there at a press conference, but he's in Amsterdam. That still makes me jealous. So, Steven, I hope you're having a great time, but also, I don't know, have some black licorice for me. Because delicious Dutch black licorice is amazing. In case you've never had it, it's fantastic.
I have not.
We're going to start off and get right into the iPads because I've been wanting to talk about these for a while now. Obviously, last week there was I had a bit of a sewer issue in my place. So last week the show ended up getting canceled kind of last minute. So we apologize for that. But I'm back now. I have running water, which is good. And I have iPads to talk about. We'll start with the Pro because there isn't as much to talk about. But basically, if you already have the 2021 Pro, the 2022 Pro is not that much different. Of course, it has the M2 processor, which Apple likes to make headlines with and likes to wow everybody. However, how much of a difference you're really going to notice from the M2 to the M1 likely isn't all that much. I would say for probably 99% of people, even people who use the Pro. If you're really already pushing your M1 Pro to the limits, I have a feeling it's likely not a processor limit that you're running into, and you're more running into a limit with, how the software is implemented, the fact that you can't quite get full-scale Pro apps on an iPad Pro yet in any ways. They haven't brought them down to that level yet. So you're probably not running into processing power problems. However, I guess, if you're looking to get into the iPad Pro market, this is kind of now the new starting point, I guess, which is good. The M2, it's not like the M2 is a bad chip. It's not like it doesn't work or anything. It's fast. It's powerful. It does everything you possibly could need. It's way more than I actually personally need for my, my workflow. One thing that is kind of different, pretty much everything else is the same. Like the design's the same. They didn't move the camera, which I thought was an interesting choice, but I guess there's some reasons for that. There's other hardware going on in the iPad Pro that isn't on the original iPad. So perhaps moving in the camera just wasn't something they could do quite this time around. But it's still in the portrait orientation where it has been, which makes, video calls and stuff look a tiny bit awkward because you're kind of not really looking at the actual camera ever. If that stuff bothers you, this is not going to help you with that. It still has all kind of the same 5G connectivity that you're used to, the same cameras on the back, the same camera on the front. There's not really much different. It even has like the same sizes. We keep hearing rumors about new sizes of the iPad Pro coming, but that has yet to happen. So you're still looking at the 12.9 inch display and the 11 inch display. Of course, the 12.9 inch one is the Liquid Retina XDR one, which means you're going to get a bit of a better display. It's going to be better for HDR content, things like that. That isn't on the 11 inch. That's still the same as last year as well. Really, the only other big change is there is a kind of a new little quirky feature called Apple Pencil Hover. So the iPad Pro 2 works with the Apple Pencil 2, much like the last year's did, but it actually can sense the Apple Pencil sort of around the iPad. Mm-hmm. And if you hover it above the screen, it kind of works as like a pointer, and you don't actually have to touch the screen. So, for example, if you're in a drawing app, it'll do a little preview for you right as you hover over the screen to show you exactly where your pencil mark or your drawing mark or your painting mark is going to go down. And even in some apps, if it's enabled, you'll actually even see like a preview of what that touch might look like. So it'll kind
So
of
how
show
did
you.
you like using that?
I mean, obviously, as someone who's not like an artist, the art part of it didn't. I didn't care particularly, me personally. I can see, obviously, if you are an artist and you do like detailed sketches, if that's like kind of your art and you're doing detailed sketches and you make really fine lines, this is going to help with that because you're going to be able to like know exactly where your pencil's going down before you go to make a stroke. So I think, there is an upgrade for that. I think what's more interesting though is there are applications obviously outside of art. Like it actually kind of works across the whole UI, and it pretty much works. Pardon me. It pretty much looks like a trackpad or a mouse.
Yeah, so it's like when you hover over something with a mouse before
Yeah,
clicking. Okay.
exactly. So like if, for example, just a quick example, like in YouTube, in YouTube, when you're on your when you're on your like subscription page or whatever, and you hover over a video, it'll start playing, it'll pop out a little bit and it'll
Yeah.
start playing. You can do that with the Apple Pencil now. You don't have to have a trackpad or a mouse connected to your iPad Pro in order to do that. And I thought that was neat. Like is it a feature that you need? I don't think so. Especially if you already are a person who has like the Magic Keyboard and uses that a lot, and you do that with the trackpad or you have a mouse that you like to use with the iPad Pro. This isn't really going to give you any extra functionality that you don't have. But if you're a person who like primarily uses the tablet sort of like as a tablet and you don't really connect it to like keyboards or anything, but you have an Apple Pencil around for, drawing or, just like making notes or what have you. It kind of does give you a boost. It's kind of like having a mouse, like an Apple Pencil that kind of works like a mouse,
Right.
which is it's good. It's nice when it works, but it's just like not. It's not like a breakthrough feature in my opinion. It's not
Right.
something that it's something that everyone's going to rush out and want to buy the iPad Pro
But
2022
but
model
did you
for.
find that it works really well? I
Yeah,
mean,
it
is it a
works.
good implementation of the
Yeah,
feature?
it's very smooth, and the mouse support and trackpad support that's been on the iPad Pro and the other iPad lineup since they kind of brought it in has actually been, I've always been surprised with. Like it actually works pretty well. It feels pretty fluid,
Yeah.
and does work very kind of like Mac-esque in a way. And this just is kind of like another implementation of that, except it's something that you have in your hand.
Yeah.
Which
Cool.
yeah, so it's interesting, but like I said, not a feature that's probably going to make a lot of people just run out and buy it. It has some, if you're more of an artist, you might find even more uses for it than perhaps somebody who isn't, but it's cool that it works kind of across the UI. And as more apps, it works across like the Apple UI for now. And then as more apps, developers get this in their hands, they'll be able to like do a little more with it.
Mhm.
And so it'll probably much like new features on Apple, it'll become like more useful and a little more unique over time because there'll be different use cases specifically for apps. But it can work. You have to be pretty close to the screen. I believe it was like it's like 12 millimeters, I think, if I remember correctly. So it's not like you can hover above. It's like
Right.
it's very much like you still have to have your Apple Pencil very close to the screen for it to enable, which makes sense because you don't want to be like waving around your Apple Pencil when you're talking and have it doing a bunch of stuff on your
Yeah.
screen. That would be bad, and would just waste battery power and all sorts of things. But yeah, I found that it was actually like surprisingly, I didn't think I was going to care about it at all, and uh, it's pretty nice. Once again, it's a little quirky. It's kind of like a little quirk that's kind of an extra perk, but I enjoyed my time with it, and I think like it's still kind of a unique feature that I appreciate, and it does sort of make you feel like you have a mouse connected even when you don't. So there's some practical applications that surprised me when I was like kind of like going through this thing. You can see pictures we'll link to it obviously in the show notes, but if you go to iMore.com and look up my iPad Pro 2022 review, you'll see pictures of like how close you got to get to the screen and sort of some implementations of it. But yeah, it's kind of like having a mouse in your hand, which if you're, like I said, if you're someone who doesn't want to buy a mouse or doesn't typically use a mouse, but you have an Apple Pencil around, like now you have a bit of extra functionality, which is nice. And that's kind of the iPad Pro. I think like my big thing is like who needs this? Honestly, it's who needs this is people who like maybe have like an older Pro that they're looking to upgrade. This will just be the up one you upgrade to now, I'm assuming, because they're not selling the 2021 version anymore. If you already have an M1 iPad Pro, like I said, I don't think you need this unless there's some strange that and I could be wrong, but maybe there's some strange use case that you are pushing the M1 processor to its very limit and you really need that kind of boost of performance. But I think for like the majority of people, that probably isn't the case. It's probably more of a software issue that they're running into if they're looking for like something more pro, quote unquote. And obviously, it didn't go up in price, which is good. Like it still starts the 11-inch base model with like the lowest storage and everything. Still starts at $800. But obviously, it gets quite expensive, especially once you start adding storage or you start adding accessories and things like that. So it's still definitely, it's obviously still the expensive Pro that you expect. It's not like the price came down or anything, but it's mostly just a small spec bump at the end of the day. So if that's what you're looking for, or you're just looking to jump on the iPad Pro train, this is now, I guess, like the best one to get. If you're looking for something that's a laptop killer, which people keep wanting, but who knows what people actually mean when they say that, this isn't going to be any more of a laptop killer than last year's iPad Pro is. So once again, you're still lacking some software there. You're still lacking some full versions of Pro apps, things like that.
Well, I would think that Stage Manager of all things would be what would make this closer to being a laptop killer. I'm not going to say that I'm not going to say an iPad is going to be a laptop replacement, because I don't think it ever will. I don't think that's what it's meant for. But I think of all the features, I think Stage Manager is the one that's going to get it the closest. It really just depends on your use case. Like what do you need a laptop for?
Yeah.
And if your laptop usage is pretty light, then you might be able to get away with using the iPad Pro as your primary laptop.
Yeah, and this isn't really
Stage Manager. Have you had a chance to play with Stage Manager?
Yeah, I was about to say thanks for bringing that up. So it's interesting because like Stage Manager is a software thing,
right?
And
but it's only fully featured on the M2 iPad Pros. It is coming to the last year's iPad Pro, the M1 iPad Pro, but you won't be able to use it on a secondary screen, which is part of the sort of point of Stage Manager. Do you agree?
Yeah, sort of. And the frustrating thing is Stage Manager still is wonky and still has bugs and doesn't quite work very well.
Yeah. So you would not advise somebody to run out and buy the 2022 iPad Pro specifically just for Stage Manager. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, unless you like want it, unless you just like want it on your iPad specifically. Like if you're looking for it on your iPad and it on, I'll say this, on the iPad, not attached to an external display. It works quite well for what it is. I don't think it's quite I remember I was really excited for it when it first came out. And then as I kind of used it in the beta on my M1 iPad Air 5 at the time, and now that I've used it on the M2 and stuff and it's out of beta and whatnot, I don't really think it's the feature we really thought it was going to be. It's very I find that it's very like limited in its use case, in my opinion. Granted, I'm not somebody who uses the iPad Pro like for my daily workflow really intensely. So I'm, take this with a grain of salt. If you're someone who really does get a lot of work done, there might be a lot of like different use cases for you to utilize Stage Manager in like a more meaningful way. But at the end of the day, I just don't know if it's what the people who are clamoring for the iPad Pro to be that true like laptop killer kind of thing. I don't think it's multitasking or that they're really asking for. At least like I don't think it's Stage Manager they're really asking for. Like the people who are clamoring for that really want like a Mac OS essentially on an iPad. And I don't know if that'll ever happen. I think there's pros and cons to that conversation, but like, I don't think Stage Manager really solves many issues for a lot of people who are like wanting the Pro to be more pro, for the lack of a better word. obviously it is nice to have kind of like multi windows open. And if you are using the 12.9-inch display, you do have like a decent amount of space to actually like utilize those kind of like smaller windows for your apps and things like that, which is nice. I think on the 11th inch display, like, and I mean, I've used it on my iPad Air, which is a 10.9-inch display, which is essentially the same as the 11-inch. So it does get like a tad more crowded. But being able to kind of like group apps together, throw them to the side in that little dock, that side dock that appears, and then kind of have like multiple sort of like little workstations going. It can, there's definitely times where like that helps your workflow. And I think there'll be people who will find that very useful. Putting it to an external display is a frustrating experience still, even on the M2. And once again, I have to remind, I don't think this is a hardware issue. I just think this is a software issue that Apple's working through right now. It just like, there's just like it sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes like the display doesn't want to function. Sometimes the display gets like all wonky. I've seen it where it like turns to the side randomly for some reason. It just isn't a fantastic experience right now. I think there's still some bugs to work out. So
Okay.
if you are really dying to like use Stage Manager on an external display, like I would say, you know, I mean, you could just know that it's not going to work like super fantastically all the time for you. I think it's getting better. I think like it works the best on the M2, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's flawless. So if like that's the one thing that you're waiting for, and that was the reason you were going to buy a Pro, like maybe wait a little bit, because first of all, then maybe there'll be more hopefully updates to the software and make it a little better, a little more stable. But then you never even know, like, you know, with the holiday season coming up, and usually new devices don't really go on sale, but you never know. You might find a little, maybe even like $50 deal or something like that on a new
Right.
iPad. And then, so I would say like, if that's what you're really looking for, like it's probably best to wait if you can. Obviously, if you just like are in the market for a new Pro and you need a new Pro and you're like, I'll figure out the software stuff later, because that should eventually get fixed through software updates and optimization and things like that Apple can do. Then yeah, go for it if this is what you're looking for anyways. But
Okay.
if you're really dying for that external display support, I would say like it's not 100% there yet. it's
Okay.
still
Good
it's
to
still
know.
still has some bugs to work out. And I'm not sure exactly, like I'm not a software engineer, so I'm trying to give Apple the benefit of doubt. I'm curious what it is about Stage Manager, since it's had such issues even when it was, you know, first launched, and saying like they can't get it on older iPads to work, and then they kind of brought it to the old iPad Pros that don't have the M1 processor, but those can't do external display. All the M series can. But then they took out the external display in the beta for a while because it wasn't working as intended, which, like as I said, it's still kind of not there yet.
Yeah.
So there's just I'm curious what it is about this. That I'm curious what it is about this feature in specific that's like giving Apple so much grief.
Yeah.
And
So
like I don't think we'll ever 100% know, but like something obviously is. I don't know if it's just I don't know. I'm not a software engineer. It's just it's interesting that this one feature has had so many issues.
yeah. So tell us about the new iPad.
Yeah. So, well, the iPad Pro isn't necessarily as exciting. The new iPad, I think, is. However,
A
as we
lot
kind
more
of allude,
changes.
yeah. So basically, if you remember the iPad Air 4, it's essentially an iPad Air 4. So it has the new kind of design language. It has the same 10.9-inch display that the iPad Air has. It has an updated camera on the back, which, like, if you remember, even from last year's 9th gen iPad, the camera on the back is like surprisingly lacking. It's like a 7 megapixel sensor, I think. It's like not even really a camera by today's standards. But this one has now been upgraded to sort of the standard 12 megapixel camera that you kind of see on the back of everything Apple does. It's just the one lens, obviously, same as the iPad Air, but it's finally like usable. So if you are someone who likes to take photos on your iPad, and there are people who love that, this is gonna like do you a lot better than the old iPad would have. Yeah, it has like the new design. It has Touch ID in the power or the sleep wake button instead of having a home button, because that's obviously been eliminated as the bezels have gotten smaller. There's no big chin, no big forehead. It's kind of changed to that same design that you see the iPad Air and iPad Pro with. It also has a USB-C port, which has caused some controversy, which I'll get into a little bit. but it has a USB-C port, which is, clearly we'll eventually see that on everything. The new Apple TV remote went to USB-C now. I feel like, Apple is finally, whether it's because they're getting forced by the EU or not, Apple is now finally getting rid of all the Lightning ports. I think the iPhone's still going to be the last one to have it, but probably it seems like probably even next year the new iPhones are going to have USB-C, but maybe it'll be a year after that. But like they're all clearly coming. So I think like in terms of quality of life, it's good. It's good that I went to USB-C. You're going to be able to kind of connect it to more things. It should be a little less frustrating in terms of, finding cords and cables going forward. It should be faster than it is, though. There's been some reports now that it's out and people have been like kind of really putting it through its paces. There's been some reports that like it's not really getting very fast speeds, which is a little unfortunate. It's definitely seemingly fat, at least to me in my like personal testing, which wasn't like very deep. It was mainly like just how I use the iPad, transferring files, things like that. I felt like it was a bit faster than last year's generation.
You
But
mean the iPad itself or the data transfer?
like the data, like transferring data off and on
Okay.
the iPad, like to external storage, or transferring, like one thing I do a lot of because I like using my iPad as like a photo editing tool because it's just like so much
Right.
easier to see the photos rather than on my phone. So a lot of times I'll like transfer big swaths of photos from my mirrorless camera onto my iPad at once, and that seems to go faster through the USB-C port than it did to like the Lightning port from my previous iPad, the 9th generation. But that apparently there's been people who have tested it like with more precise tools, and it's actually not getting very fast speeds, which is a little unfortunate because USB-C
Compared to
compared
what?
to
Compared
like
to a
other
Pro?
USB-C connectors, like USB-C
Okay.
can actually get up to like 5 gigabits per second, I think. Or at least I think, and I think USB-C 3.1 can actually get up to 10 gigabytes per second. But people have tested it, and it's like not getting anywhere near what like other basic USB-C ports can do. And it's like apparently relatively similar to what the Lightning connector was doing before.
Oh.
So I found that was interesting. Like I said, when I was doing my review and I was testing it and I was transferring things, to me it seemed faster, but perhaps that was more of a software thing, or rather like a processing power thing than it was the actual port. So something to keep in mind if you are like, well, this has USB-C, and I think that's good in the long term. I think this one still isn't like that very powerful USB-C port that you can see, and it also kind of proves my point about how a lot of people think that USB-C is, such a great technology, and it is in a lot of ways, but it's still very segmented. There's still lots of different ports and lots of different cables, and there's power transfer and not power transfer and all sorts of things. So like it would be nice if we somehow could unify that a little bit to make it simpler for people. But I guess we're starting small with just like trying to unify everybody into a single port for charging and things like that, which, small steps at a time. Hopefully one time we can get it to a point where we're just like, this is the port. This is the one port that should be on everything at least. And then you can upgrade it from there if you want, but there should be like a baseline of what it is. But something to keep in mind, something that even my review, like I, because I don't have very fine-tuned instruments, I didn't specifically see it, but now that people have put it through those paces, the USB-C port is not the fastest. So something to keep in mind if you are someone who transfers large files lots, that you're not going to see like a super increase in speeds because it went to USB-C. But I still think, like I said, it's still a good like quality of life improvement. The smart connector is actually still on the bottom rail, which I'll try and show you guys here. I have my folio, my keyboard folio attached to it right now. But the smart connector, instead of being on the back like it is on the iPad Air and stuff, it is on the rail, the side rail of the iPad. And that's where things like accessories and stuff will connect rather than on the back. That's the blue, by the way, which is quite vibrant.
It's really pretty.
Yeah, I really like it. I really like the vibrant colors a lot. It makes me wish that these were the colors that were on the Air. Not that I don't mind, not that I dislike the Air colors, but they are a little more muted, and I like vibrant colors. So, but yeah, the smart connector is kind of changed there, so it's not quite the same. You can't use the same accessories as the iPad Air 5, which is one of the reasons why it came out with the Magic Keyboard Folio, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But yeah, so the whole design has like changed over. It essentially looks like an iPad Air now, which is sort of the reason why it's in this weird place in the lineup. It doesn't have an M1 though. That's like obviously a big thing. It has an A14 Bionic, which is an upgrade over the A13 Bionic, which was in last year's ninth generation iPad. Apple says it brings about a 20% increase in CPU power and about a 10% improvement in graphics power. Are you going to notice that? I don't know. It'll depend on how you use your iPad, I guess. To me, I didn't notice it a ton, but like it is better. And the other thing I'll even say too is like, once again, we've talked about this before, but because the iPad Air 5 has the M1 processor, which, on paper and theoretically in practice, it is much better than the A14. But like, how much do I notice that? Like, I've used an iPad Air 5 since I got it, later or earlier in the year, and going to the new iPad and testing it out, and been using it every day now for like 2 weeks. I haven't noticed much of a difference, like downgrading, so to say, from the M1 to an A14. So this is why like the price of this. So that's like the other big thing. So this is the new base iPad, although they are keeping the ninth generation around as a more budget option. But it used to be $329. Or the iPad ninth generation is still $329, but this one has now been bumped up to $449. So it's got a $120 increase, which is not an insignificant amount. I mean, it did go through a lot of changes. Like it's the biggest change to the baseline iPad that we've ever seen. It's the same changes that, have come to the other iPad lines. So it's not like it's, completely out of the box or anything like that. But it does bring, I don't know, the price point is a little odd. It just like, it kind of brings it so close to the Air, and it has so many of the Air's features in a lot of way. The only thing it's really missing from the Air is like the M1 processor, if that's important to you. Like then this, the base iPad is still not for you if you really want that M1. This one, probably the more big ones is this one, the new iPad, it still doesn't have a laminated screen. So it still has that like layer of air sort of in between the screen and the display. So you still kind of
How does that play out in real life?
I mean, it's like a little weird going from a laminated display to a non-laminated display, just because like it doesn't feel as nice, if that makes sense. Like you can kind of like when you tap on the screen, you can sort of like hear it more because there is that hollow, like the screen's kind of hollow in a way because it has that space. So but it's little things like that. Like I don't know if in practice there's really much difference like that I can tell. Like it's like you can feel it and you can sort of see it when you use them side by side. But if you were just to pick this up, I don't think you'd be like, oh, this screen is terrible. Like it's not like it's bad per se, but it's just like, it's a little interesting that they didn't do away with that. And my guess is it's probably a cost saving measure. I'm assuming it's cheaper to have a non-laminated display, and since this cost was already going up so much, they trying to keep it down as much as they can, and find out where they can kind of cut corners, that's for lack of a better term, to sort of kind of like keep it in that more budget price range, although I would say it's kind of out of that price range now. And then the other thing is like the Apple Pencil support. So this still supports the Apple Pencil first generation, which has a Lightning connector on it. So how do you connect a Lightning connector Apple Pencil to a USB-C iPad? Well, they give you a dongle. Now,
they give you a dongle,
well,
or they sell you a dongle separately?
Yeah. So if you already have, I guess I should make this clear first. So if you already have an Apple Pencil first generation, say you have one for your old iPad or whatever sticking around, and you want to buy the new iPad, you'll have to buy a $9 dongle, which we'll talk more about the dongle in a second. So it's $9 just to buy that. If you don't have an Apple Pencil already, it's going to start coming with the $99 with the Apple Pencil first generation. So when you buy a new Apple Pencil first generation, it should come with a dongle, and you don't have to spend, I guess you don't have to spend any extra money to get it on top of that. But if you already have an Apple Pencil and then you need the dongle in order to connect it to this iPad, which you do, you'll need to pay the $9. So that's kind of like the first crappy thing. Like, I wish it kind of just came with the dongle. Like, why not just come with the dongle? First of all, the other crappy thing is the dongle is so annoying. Like, we're used to having dongles on Apple and even just tech enthusiasts in general. We're used to having dongles for cables for lots of different things, for lots of different devices. But this dongle sucks because it's essentially, the dongle has 2 ports. So it's female to female, which is odd because that means that you have to plug in your USB-C cord to your iPad, then plug that cord into the dongle, then plug the Apple Pencil into that dongle. So you end up having this like long, annoying train of things just to charge your Apple Pencil.
Yes. So you actually need 4 things in order to charge. You need the Apple Pencil and the iPad, and then you need a cable and a dongle. So you're using 4 different things just to
Yeah,
charge.
I mean, you can obviously, the caveat to this is you can still charge the Apple Pencil first generation with that little dongle that comes with it, that you can charge it with like just from the wall using an Apple like a regular Apple Lightning connector. So you still have that option. But if you want to charge it with your iPad, like say you're on the go, you're at a coffee shop, your Apple Pencil is dying, you want to give it a charge, you got to pull out your cable, you got to pull out your dongle, you got to like have this big long thing.
Yeah.
And you can't even use it while it's charging. Like it doesn't you can't use it while it's charging. So you just have like this long wand attached to your thing.
But you could just use your phone charger to charge it. Just any phone charger, right?
Yeah, because the Apple Pencil comes with a little it has always done this. It's always come with like a little dongle that you can attach to like just a lightning, like a lightning cable. The idea is so that you can charge it from the wall rather than charging it from your iPad. But like I still am of the opinion that like the point of an Apple Pencil is to have it with you kind of all the time. Have it with you when you're on the go, when you're using an iPad. And your iPad is a mobile computing device. So to put something so like anti-mobile, like I already didn't like the Apple Pencil first generation for like having to plug into the lightning port as it is. It was always kind of awkward and a little annoying, but like, you know, at least there was a way to like directly charge it via your iPad if you were out somewhere. And like, you know, you can get a decent amount of battery life out of it with like, you know, a 10, 15, 20-minute charge. Like it doesn't take too long to kind of get up to a level where you can take it out and start using it for like a decent amount of time again. But having to like pull out all this stuff and carry it, you know, makes you have to carry around extra stuff. It's not really contained. It's kind of messy. It's just like, it isn't user friendly at all.
I mean, there's really no way to charge it without some kind of dongle to anything.
And it makes me wonder why Apple didn't just, you know, like just include Apple, like make Apple II Pencil support a thing. I wonder if it's
just get rid of the first generation Apple Pencil and make everything Apple Pencil 2 compatible.
Yeah, to play,
not possible, but Apple needs to start moving in that direction.
Yeah, it was an interesting choice, and then including a dongle that, like, in my opinion, it should have just been a dongle where like there was a port on one end for you to stick your Apple Pencil in, and then it was a connector of a USB-C just to connect to your USB-C iPad. So you just like, it would still be annoying, but at least it's like a direct connection that you don't need a cable for.
Yeah, I would recommend at this point, if somebody's buying an Apple Pencil and first generation Apple Pencil, I would say don't buy it. I would say get a different stylus. Get the like Logitech Crayon, for example, which is compatible with any of the newer iPad models. So it should be future proof for quite some time. Or, you know, there's a gazillion third party styli out there, stylus pens out there. So
the only thing that kind of sucks about a lot of the third party ones, and specifically the Logitech Crayon that I can think of, is it doesn't have pressure sensitivity. So if you are someone who you know, maybe you don't use it, like maybe you're not an artist for work or what have you, but like you like doing art on the side or whatever, and you like having that option on the regular base iPad, it's not going to be as good for you if you get a different stylus. So something to keep in mind. But yes, using the Apple Pencil first generation in 2022 doesn't make a lot of sense, and Apple didn't really make it make any sense. And it's generally just like really it's just awkward and weird, and I can't believe that it just doesn't seem like a very Apple solution to like what is a pretty like obvious or common problem. Like I don't know, it's just it's a very weird choice, and I don't understand it. Um, and once again, one other caveat to this is like if they are trying to keep like obviously they didn't want to make this too expensive, but like if they're trying to keep costs down, if you think of the Apple Pencil, like the Apple Pencil 2 is currently like it's like $30 more than the Apple Pencil first generation. So like that is, you know, an extra cost, because it is an extra cost as it is already, because Apple Pencils don't come with you know, don't come with iPads. You have to buy them separately. So I guess there's that silver lining too, which is like, you know, at least you can get an Apple Pencil for a bit cheaper if you are looking for one that works with the new iPad.
Yeah,
But
but
it's
just keep in mind the Logitech crayon for iPad. It is they do sell it directly on Apple's website,
yeah,
probably in the stores as well, and it's $70. So, you know, if the pressure sensitivity isn't a deal breaker for you, it's one to consider.
yeah. I'll just say it's like the last thing I'll say about the iPad 2022 is that it's a really good iPad, but because it's in this weird place with its pricing, and especially with like the holiday season around the corner, like as much as I think like I think like the people who really need the M1 in the iPad Air are there's less of them than they probably think that they are. I think the A14 Bionic is probably going to feel pretty good for most people. I think like this is kind of now the new iPad that I would consider the best for most people. However,
Mhm.
the iPad Air 5 you can find on deals already. And with the Black Friday and holiday season coming up, you're likely going to be able to find even more deals. And like once you start even tightening that gap between the two, it's kind of like, well, you know, if I can pay an extra $50, let's just say as an example, 50 or maybe even $70, and a kind of like upgrade to the iPad Air 5, like the iPad Air 5 is still the better device overall, right?
Yeah,
It has it has a slightly better screen. It has a better Apple Pencil. You can charge it directly. You know, there's just some stuff about it that's better, and I feel like with the holiday season coming up, especially since the iPad Air is now older than
right.
some of the new stuff, you're likely going to see more deals on that product than you will on these ones. So I find it interesting. It's like an interesting dilemma. It's in such a weird place in the Apple lineup. And then of course, Apple kept around the ninth generation iPad. So they're still selling that 329 one. So if you do want to go out and you're like, this is too expensive, I'm just one of those people who likes an iPad because I like to play games on it, or I like to, you know, I use it as like content viewing or things like that. There's still an option to buy like what I would consider like an actual pretty great budget tablet. Don't know how long that's going to be around. I kind of feel like Apple is sort of milking the profits from that for the holiday season, because I think iPads are a pretty popular
Yeah,
holiday
and
gift and things like that.
it's a great gift for a kid too.
Yeah. So I don't know how long that'll be around, but that's still an option if like you were wondering what this update was going to be, and then this update seems too expensive or like nothing you really care about. You're fine with the old design and you're fine with that stuff. Like get the iPad ninth generation. You're not really missing out on too much except for the new design stuff and like a better camera on the back. Which once again, if you're an iPad photographer, then that'll obviously, you know, you'll care about
Right.
that. The one last thing I'll say is that Keyboard Folio is also a weird device because it's so good. It's such a good keyboard. It's a two-piece design, unlike the Magic Keyboard for the iPad Pro and the iPad Air. So the keyboard actually comes off separately than the back part, which the back part is also just the kickstand, which works really nicely, feels pretty stable. It has a couple different viewing angles you can use. Really great if you just want to prop up something to watch content, and then you can, you know, use the smart connector, stick on the keyboard when you want to do some typing. The keyboard has a full row of function keys, which isn't on the iPad Pro Magic Keyboard either, and those work really great and how you would expect. I actually found using the Magic Keyboard more of a nuisance after using the Magic Keyboard Folio because it didn't have those function keys. Um,
Interesting.
so it's really good, but here's the problem: it's $249. which is literally 55% of the price of the actual iPad it works with.
Wow.
So I just I don't think it's worth it. Like I like, as much as I love it and as much as like it's really great, and it, like, you know, Apple does make premium accessories, all their accessories. I don't think they've made an accessory that's like straight out bad. But like, I don't know who wants to spend like essentially buying a whole other iPad on top of their iPad that they're just buying. Like,
Yeah.
at least with the Magic Keyboard is expensive. Like the regular Magic Keyboard you get with the iPad Pro and the iPad Air is expensive, but like it's not 55% of the price of the device that you're using it with.
Right.
And it's just like, I just
only because you're using it with a more expensive device.
Yeah, true. But it, like, I don't know. It does this weird thing, at least in my mind, where it's like you have to weigh the pros and cons a little more heavily, I think. And especially when there are just so many other third-party options. Granted, there's no real third-party option I've seen with like a two-piece design like this. And obviously, this one uses the smart connector and stuff like that. And a lot of them use Bluetooth rather than the smart connector, since they're not, you know, Apple made or Apple, you know, certified or anything. But there's just so many other options out there that give you can get touchpads with and things like that, and trackpads and whatnot. So it's just, it's such a great device that's kind of marred by this really annoying price point. And the only other thing too is it doesn't have any backlit keys, which is like a little annoying. It's not for me, I've never found backlit keys to be like an absolute necessary must in a computer, because
I'm not working in the dark.
Yeah, I don't typically work in the dark. However, I understand why backlit keys are nice, and I know that for like I know some visually impaired people who really like backlit keys. It just kind of helps them a little extra, things like that. So this one doesn't have that, where like the Magic Keyboard with the iPad Air and the iPad Pro, I believe does, if I remember correctly.
Do you know offhand if Logitech makes any smart connector keyboards for the new base model iPad? Because I know they do for the iPad Pro.
Yeah, I don't think they have one out for the new iPad yet. I was looking around because the
Logitech
combo
is the only company that has smart connector keyboards at all, right? Because that's a proprietary Apple thing that they only share with Logitech. Is that your
I
understanding
believe
as well?
so. I believe so. Yeah.
Because I do love a smart connector, but I mean, the truth is, if you don't mind connecting via Bluetooth, which I mean, it's not that complicated, you can just you have so many more options. It's so much cheaper. Whether you need a keyboard case or you just, what I do honestly is I have an Apple, just a regular Apple keyboard, you know, the old Magic Keyboard that's been around forever and ever. And I just use my iPad in its regular case and just put the keyboard in front of it and connect it by Bluetooth. And it's just such a cheap solution. And it's future proof, because as I get each new iPad and a new case for the iPad, that old keyboard still works. I've had it for years and years.
So yeah, the Logitech does have a combo touch, which is a detachable keyboard kickstand that uses the smart connector for the 10th generation. It's cheaper, but it's not much cheaper. Like it runs
That's how it usually is with Logitech.
Yeah,
it's usually
it runs
slightly cheaper than the Apple solution.
Yeah. So this one runs $219 instead of $249. So you know, you're saving $30. It's still pretty expensive for especially when you compare it to the price of the actual device overall, but it is a bit of a cheaper way. And like, I've used the Logitech ones before on other iPads. They're pretty great.
I mean, we're not being paid to plug Logitech here at all. But they do have nice products. They are slightly cheaper than Apple's, and because they are partners with Apple, they do have a lot of that proprietary technology.
Yeah. So I would say like going for the combo touch for the 10th generation iPad is probably at least a way to save a little money if you really want.
I would just tell people to look at both. Just look at just look online. Just look at the features and see, because they always have slightly different features than whatever Apple's offering.
Totally.
And you'll have your own preference about what works better for you.
All right, Karen, let's run through some of the news and stuff this week, because there's been some interesting stuff.
We're already getting close to the end of the show.
Yeah, that's okay. There's a few quick hits that we'll do. So Mark Gurman says there are no Macs. There are no Macs coming this year, that they're going to be coming in 2023. which, you know, we thought once that there was kind of the initial thoughts were once the iPad event was kind of over in October, we were going to have maybe a November Mac event, which they've had in the past, sometimes in the past, things like that. But it seems that a refresh for the MacBook Pro, the 14-inch and 16-inch, are likely to come in 2023, maybe even as early as March, which is typically around the time that Apple has their first event of the year. So I guess it's interesting. I definitely thought they were going to be coming, you know, this year, but now it seems like we're kind of done for this year. At least that's what the rumblings are around the industry. I'm curious if the new Macs are really going to do much, or if they're just going to be processor bumps. It's sounding like they're mostly going to be processor bumps at this point, just kind of like putting the M2, probably like an M2 Pro or an M2 Max, as if they follow the same naming conventions as the previous generation did. Yeah, those aren't coming till 2023, at least that's the current news on the street. So if you're waiting for that, you might have to wait a little longer. However, that being said, to blur the lines even more, at least somewhat, in between iPads and I guess MacBooks, apparently there's a 16-inch iPad planned for 2023. So we've heard 14-inch before, and I already think the 12.9-inch is kind of big, to be honest, for a tablet. But 16 inches seems crazy to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an iPad mini user myself, so
Yeah.
and I've had an 11-inch
Mhm.
Pro, and that was fine, but that would be the absolute maximum size for me personally, but I have heard people say, "I wish there was a much bigger iPad." I don't know, 16, that sounds just huge. That's like the size of a large that's the largest MacBook size. I mean, that's enormous, but I guess there'd be a market for it. I don't know. I feel like it's kind of niche. I don't think it would be a huge market, but there are
Yeah.
people out there that want it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a little weird. Once again, it's a rumor. It's from the information is where we're getting this rumor from. I I don't know. I'm interested to see if they would go that big right away. I feel like a 14-inch was kind of made more sense. But 16-inch just seems insane. Like that is you are carrying around the laptop at that point. Like that isn't really a tablet
A big
anymore.
laptop,
It's
bigger
like
than
a
any laptop
yeah,
I would carry.
yeah,
I'm a 13-inch laptop user myself, so I wouldn't even go with 16 on for a
yeah.
laptop. So,
But apparently the report states that Apple is targeting for a fourth quarter release of 2023. So it might not be all the way until about this time next year. Uh, but that we'll see a much bigger iPad Pro. Um, so that'll be interesting if that comes out. I also wonder if it's going to have anything different than the current iPad Pros, or if it's literally just going to be a bigger iPad Pro. We'll have to see if they do something special with the screen. Like you said, we've seen the differences between the 12.9 and the 11-inch. This might offer even more, updates or something like that. So it'll be interesting. And I wonder if there'll be like more storage capacity and stuff that'll be included. So maybe there's some reasons to go bigger that are just outside of being bigger for the sake of being bigger. Um, there's an interesting rumor that MacBooks might actually get the illuminated iPad or Apple logo back on them again. So if you remember, MacBooks used to have like the Apple logo on the back of MacBooks used to glow, right? There used to be like
yeah.
a white light
I
up
have to
glow
admit,
with
I do
them.
miss that.
Right, it was kind of fun, but then in 2015 they kind of phased them out when they moved to like a more slim design, and they did all that stuff, and then they phased out. Apparently now there's been a patent, which once again patents aren't necessarily the best indications of future things to come, but there's been a patent that was kind of dug up by Patently Apple that suggests electronic devices with backlit partial mirror structures on Apple's laptops have been like patented. So that's sort of like interesting because it sounds like they, at least from what it's worded, it sounds like they would keep that reflective nature that we see now, because they're essentially like shiny pieces of metal that we see now, but then there would be a light through it, which would be kind of interesting. Don't know if there's any like practical features to it yet, at least that wasn't
Yeah,
obvious
it
from.
doesn't add any kind of functionality whatsoever. It's just pretty.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting to see if that ever comes to fruition. As we said, patents don't necessarily always come to anything
Yeah, what
grand.
percentage of Apple's patents do you think actually come to fruition? Like 10%, if that, 5%?
Yeah, who even knows? I
It's
wouldn't be
very
surprised.
slim.
There's probably a ton of patents that we don't even ever hear about because they're for things that don't make any like either don't make sense or like very very tiny minuscule
Right, or
software
just aren't even worth
things.
reporting.
Yeah, exactly. So I wouldn't be surprised if like the amount of patents they actually file versus like stuff that comes out. I wouldn't be surprised if it's quite literally like something like 3%. That wouldn't even
Yeah,
surprise me,
that
to be
wouldn't
honest.
surprise me at all either.
So yeah, but it's interesting. I think just because like I do miss that glowing Apple logo. It was kind of a nice, it was a nice, interesting little tidbit of having a MacBook. The Apple logo is, a big important part of Apple's designs. So it's nice to make it a little stand out a little. Okay, let's spend like 5 minutes here, Karen. Let's just talk about Twitter real quick. So
The
e-
elephant in the room.
yeah, Elon Musk, he's bought Twitter. He went into he this past like week and a half, we've seen him. He went into Twitter and he carried a sink in and made a weird pun on Twitter where he said, let that sink in, while he was carrying a sink. Uh, which, okay, I don't really understand the point, but I guess like puns are puns, so that's nice. And now everything seems to be on fire. There's people have been laid off. There's reports today of more layoffs coming via email, which that sucks. The big thing now is Elon Musk wants you to pay $8 a month for Twitter Blue, which will include verification. So you're essentially just paying for verification, where the old system where you would apply and it would kind of be doled out sort of based on merit. Although, granted, that wasn't really working very well and pretty much almost impossible for anyone to get verified these days. But the $8 monthly fee will include verification, but also some other features, things like priority and replies and mentions and search. So it's kind of like paying for reach a little bit in that way. There's also like the ability to post longer audio and videos. You'll see half as many ads. You'll still see ads, but you'll only see half as many ads as if you don't have Twitter Blue. Elon also has said, or the reports have been, that the new subscription will sort of be phased in. So if you currently have the blue check mark, you're not going to immediately get kicked off. If you don't pay the $8 right away, there apparently will be some sort of grace period. But eventually, if you don't pony up the money, it sounds like it's going to go away, even if you have it right now. Karen, you're actually verified.
I am.
Are you gonna be paying $8 a month to keep verification?
I would be hard pressed to pay $8 a month to keep a check mark for magical, invisible internet points. I don't know. It's a lot of money to spend for that. I don't really feel like I need any of the other features. I'm not a heavy Twitter user.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know. We'll see. I haven't made a firm decision on that, but I'm leaning towards no.
That's fair. Yeah. What's funny is like I've been considering getting Twitter Blue, like which is currently at like $5 a month or whatever,
Right, for the editing
for the
feature.
editing. But here's the funny thing: now it apparently sounds like editing is actually coming to everyone, and it won't be locked behind Twitter Blue, which I mean is good. First of all, I like when companies are going to give access to more features that don't cost money. That's great. But it also kind of completely annihilates my wish for wanting Twitter Blue, which, so I guess like, joke's on you, Elon. You could have had my money if you didn't
Well,
do
so,
this.
so here's the question. I know you and other people would like to be verified on Twitter, but haven't been able to get that because I don't know, the process got really weird for some reason. So now will you pay that $8 a month to get Twitter verification?
I don't think so. I don't think I will. I think like, yeah, I tried going through it like once or twice, going through the process that was set up, and it just didn't work for whatever reason, even though from what I can tell I have all the criteria that I would need to be verified. But that's
I
neither
know
here
all
nor
of our
there.
coworkers have all of the criteria and then some. And I know some of them will try like every month and it just doesn't go through.
Yeah,
So it would be nice if Elon would have come in and said, I'm going to fix this process
yeah,
rather than I'm going to charge for this process. But
yeah. So what's interesting about this is like, um and politics aside, like Musk is kind of in a weird position right now with now that he's officially bought Twitter and it's gone through, and there was the whole will he buy it, then he didn't want it, and blah blah thing. But like Twitter doesn't make any money. Like notoriously, Twitter hasn't posted a profit in like I think like 2 or 3 years. And so obviously Elon Musk, who just spent like 44 billion on buying Twitter or whatever it was, is gonna want the platform to make money, which means he's gonna need to court advertisers, obviously, because that's where most of any Twitter revenue comes from right now. But he also needs to he needs to find ways to make money on Twitter, and this is sort of I think part of his persona and part of his management style when he takes over companies like this, which he's done in the past, is to come in, make sweeping changes, do things really fast, and kind of like live with the consequences, I guess, sort of afterwards. So I don't think this is necessarily not par for the course of what we've seen him do before, but he is in this weird spot where like I feel like he's kind of half getting it. It's like paying for Twitter is not necessarily a bad thing. And I know some people maybe think that's wrong to think. And I'm not saying you should have to pay for Twitter, but like there are other Twitter apps that are actually kind of better than Twitter in a lot of ways. And I'm surprised that like you would try and be like, hey, we're going to offer a paid version of Twitter that has like these features that we've seen in other third-party apps that have been well liked and well used and that people love, that we've just never included in the regular Twitter app for whatever reason. And like, we'll charge a subscription fee for that. If it wants to come with verification or not, that's a whole other side thing. But like the idea of paying for a Twitter experience is not necessarily bad. I think there's like things you can do to make that appealing, especially if you go like no ads, which is probably the way most subscriptions should be. If you're paying money, you should probably not see ads. But yeah, so all these changes coming into effect, what the new subscription and the editing might happen as early as like next week. So we'll have to see what happens. We'll have to see if all of a sudden everyone floods with check marks, or maybe all of a sudden nobody has check marks anymore. We'll have to see what happens.
I can't help thinking about the Dr. Seuss story, The Sneetches, which, if you're not familiar, it's the star-bellied Sneetches are like the fancy Sneetches, and the Sneetches without the stars are shunned because they don't have the stars. And this guy comes to town, this Sylvester McMonkey McBean, and he has a machine that puts stars on their bellies for a fee, of course. And I won't spoil the whole story for you, but let's just say that the McBean character gets very rich.
Yeah, and it is weird because like originally verification was sort of meant as a way to like be like, hey, this person is who they say they are. Don't listen
Right.
to all these people who make these stupid parody accounts or bot accounts or whatever. But then like over time verification, because it became so hard to attain and everything, it kind of
Right. It
became
became
this
a, s-
popularity
a
symbol.
star.
Yeah. And so like now it's in this weird place where it's like, I don't really, I personally, this is my personal belief, I don't want verification to be like, I don't want it to be, oh, this is like a popularity thing. I want it to be what it was intended for, which is like,
Right. I agree with you
right.
totally.
And so but now it's like, if you can just pay for it, it's like, it's kind of becoming a status symbol in its own
It
right.
changes the
And
meaning. Yeah.
yeah, so it's a complicated situation.
It
there's a
used
lot
to
of
say, "I'm really me."
yeah,
Now now it's gonna say, "I can pay $8 a month for Twitter,"
yeah.
which
So
is a completely different message.
it's a little weird. I don't know how I feel about it completely yet. I'll be interested to see what happens when it does, or if it does get implemented. Things are changing super fast. Like I said, there's been reports that even more firing/layoffs are happening at Twitter like today at some point. So like who knows what's going on over there. It's going to be an interesting place to be for the next while. Twitter's like my only social media I really use all that frequently, and like it's definitely, I'm worried about its future. We'll have to see what
Yeah.
happens with it, but
We'll see. So
yeah.
we did get a comment from MX 4211 wanting us to talk about Mac OS Ventura and how it's nice and stable and great. And obviously, there's a lot to talk about there, but we're running out of time, so we'll talk about that next time. Did you want to say anything real quick about Ventura?
Uh Honestly, I'll be completely honest. I have yet to update to Ventura, not
Oh, okay.
not because of like it's bad or anything. That's not why.
You just haven't had the
I
time
just
to have your
I just
computer out of commission long
yeah,
enough to
I
do
just
it.
haven't
Yeah.
really gotten around to it. I did use the beta for a little while and I liked the features in the beta, so I'm excited for actually using it, but I haven't actually checked out the full release. But MX4211, we will make sure to sort of circle back to that next week since we are out of time. So that is our show for today. I want to thank everybody for listening in. If you listen to us live, thank you so much. It's always nice to see your comments and hear see what you're saying in the chat. We really appreciate that. If you're listening to us in your podcatcher of choice, whether that be Apple, Apple Podcast, Spotify, or anywhere else. Thank you so much. We couldn't do this without you. Thank you so much for listening and downloading each week. As always, you can reach out to us on Twitter. You can find our Twitter handle in the show notes or up on the screen here. Mine's just my name. Karen's her name with her middle initial. So find us on Twitter. Ask us questions about the show, things you want us to talk about. Ask us questions about how we're using our Apple tech. We always like to hear from you, and get ideas of stuff you want to hear. And we'd like to thank our new audio editor, Miles. Thank you so much for making us sound so good. This is going to be his first show. So give him a shout out if you want. You can always tweet at us or tweet at iMore and give him a shout out if you want. Welcome him to the team. And until next week, we will say goodbye. Bye, everybody.
Bye.